Good again? Okay. Can you hear me now, down there? Good. So today as I was putting in the abstract of the lecture, we're going to go in the juices part and we start to talk about money. And so there's going to be an exercise. So don't get too comfy because at the end, we're going to dedicate a lot of time, enough time to the exercise. And I think from home, we expect people to get stuck in as well. So the idea for today is really, I took on board some feedback I got from Professor Staiano that possibly I was overloading you with a lot of stuff. So today we go on two things, right? And we're going to try to stick to the two things. I'm going to give you a bit of an overview at the end of something I think you will find important. So let's look at again the overview so far. So pillar one, remember, was all about the culture, the roles that we have in data, the types of organization, the journey of what is data maturity. The pillar two, we went more in understanding what is the methodology around. So if we are having our mindset that we want to do something good for data, what is the changes that we need to put in place to work and to make data properly embedded in our company? So today we are on pillar three. So pillar three, we start to talk about productization. So we will understand more about what is meaning productization data, why we want to productize data. And you're going to know more about these acronyms at the end, ESG, CSR. If you don't know them already, we're going to quickly go through them. All right. There's going to be an exercise. You will be happy to know there's going to be calculation this time, right? It's not going to be stories. It's not going to be, no, this time you are supposed to use Excel to make multiplication. And we're going to tell you a little bit more about the end. The suggestion I give you, recommendation I give you now, think as a business person. Don't think as a person that wants to do data science. And I'll explain more later. So, recap. Previous episodes, you probably remember this one. We were discussing the curve of the maturity of data. We start to talk about data debt. We're going to discuss more about that. We introduced the consumer stories as an important way of understanding what is that our business people want to do with data. And it's important for us because if we don't know what they want to do with data, we can't give them the right data. We discussed what data domains are. So families of data that we have the ability to, rank and stack to understand where do we know less, when do we know more. So if we have a project, we can tell immediately, oh, this is going to be more difficult, it's going to be less difficult. And we talk about the modeling of data. So we spend some time in understanding what conceptual, logical, physical model is. I hope you still remember something, at least the egos in your head. And then we had a nice chat, nice from my perspective, a nice chat about risk management. So what is risk, why risk is important, why risk has to be part of the way we do data. And we ended up with the data excellence operating model that wraps up all of these things, right? So it's the methodology that we put in place, we add on to whatever the company does today. Because remember, probably at the very beginning, I was saying one of the issues with data that people forget about data when they're doing stuff. It's not part of their ritual. They don't wake up in the morning and say, oh, let's see what quality this data is. No, they want to code, they want to develop something, they want to launch a product. And effectively, companies want to sell stuff. They don't care about data. Data has to help them doing it. And we need to help them to understand how we help. So today we want to talk about value from data. So we want to calibrate, we want to really be good engineers and we want to say, dear business, if you do this, you get that, right? Because our friends in the business don't know what's the value of quality for them. They can't, we said at the beginning that they don't know if I want to do a marketing campaign, if I want to launch a new product, I can't connect. It's difficult for them to correlate the data I need, the quality of the data I need with the outcome I want to achieve. And stop me anytime when I say something you don't understand, please. So let's not go ahead without you understanding and following me, because otherwise it's pointless what we're doing. So if I say a word like outcome, when I say outcome, I mean a tangible effect, a tangible something that the business wants to do. Yes, sir.
I am following the chat. So if anyone from home has question, please raise your hand.
Okay. Can I continue? Yes. So at this point, it's useful for us. I'm having ebook somewhere that freezes my brain. Is everyone on mute? Is everyone on mute? Okay. It's you. Your mic is on. Sorry, it's the speaker. The speaker is on. Hello. Okay, done? Yes. So at this point in time, it's useful to introduce the concept of product. Right. Can data be a product? Why we want to introduce this concept? Because it's easier for us to explain people the concept of product or align data to a concept of product, because people have in their mind the idea that the product is something they is conceived to satisfy a need. It's actually designed for specific, it's got some characteristics. And if you look down through those, just start to create this parallels, analogy, is helping you. And I mean, in honor to the place we are, I said producer and produce from Latin, to bring forth, to create something that you are bringing to life. Why? Because you want to do something with it. And if you go through this, you probably can quickly think, yeah, is data conceived to satisfy an assumed demand? Yes. Is designed for a specific usage? Arguably, yes. It's expected to generate an outcome. Yeah, I want to use data to do something, right? So yes, I want to generate something. Can be assembled. I know a data object, a data product can be made of different data sets. So we can bring it together. Is built through a process manned or unmanned. Yeah, like a product is certified. Is something that we have certification used for. We can decide that a certain product is actually certified for a certain usage. We expect product to satisfy certification or safety, for example, or something that has to be from my company, something is electricity driven, right? So you know that has to pass certain certification. The same for data. Is sold or bought, is improved over time, and then at the end, it's got a life cycle. You phase it out. So I think we can agree that possibly data is a product, can be treated as a product, and there's going to be a meaning for that, and we'll go through this. So if your data were a product, like in a production line, you have your manufacturer, you have your suppliers are providing you with raw material, you have a manufacturing distribution, you have finished good. The same you're going to have from a data point of view. You have your system of records, which is providing you the raw data. You acquire and collect data. You have manufacturing and the distribution data. You create a data product, and you offer that in what is called a system of insight. So as a way, I don't know if you're familiar with this type of architecture, but mainly the data architecture, you can identify three types of system. You have system of record when you record data, system of engagement when you have a website. This is your web portal to a customer. And then you have system of insight when you create reporting, dashboarding, analytics, whatever. So to use data to do something. And why you do that? Because at the end of this chain, there is a consumer, someone or an agent, someone who does something with it. Why? To achieve value. So this parallel helps, because you start to explain people, like you use a hammer to, do something, or a saw, or use any product you have in mind. The same is for data. You use it to achieve some value. So of course you want to expect that in productization, you have a nice manufacturing line, or everything is very well organized, and there is a pipeline that is outputting data products all the time. But that's not exactly the way it works at the beginning. The way it works at the beginning is more following what is a agile and more, let's say more in modern companies, you will find an agile approach to this. So are you familiar with agile product development? If you're not, I'm going to go quickly through that. So What is agile product? Agile is a way of managing a program, right? You have mainly in the textbook for delivering something, you will have more like the waterfall, which you have, we do this, we do this, we do that, and we finish, right? So, and then you have agile, in which there isn't a start and an end, but there is a sequence of events or a sequence of sprints, so-called, that brings you from a POC, a proof of concept, to through different sprints, you will have a backlog. A backlog is the list of features. Now, if you connect this to this story we discussed last time, so the data consumer story will tell you is the one that drives this. So what is that you want to do? This story can be, I want to be able to travel in safety and be dry with at least 4 people at least 50 miles an hour, right? That's the story can be this. So you start the story proving that you can travel on wheels. So you start with a POC, and then you go into a prototype. So the prototype is the one in which is not the POC anymore. It's something that is closer to the story, but of course it's not the complete story yet. So you are taking features from the backlog and you are embedding it, you are in the product, you are developing that. So what's the feature that went from the POC to the prototype? I'm having an engine, right? I'm not using my feet, I'm having an engine. Then in the sprint 2, I'm not, wet anymore. I'm having 3 wheels, I'm more stable. I'm actually dry now. Am I doing more than 50? No, I'm not. So I'm still in the pilot, but I learn, I know how this thing is behaving. And finally, sprint 3, I'm having what is an MVP, minimum viable product. What we mean? Easy, right? The funny thing is that data is like that. So if I think about data as a product, I can actually, in my backlog, when I put together, and here I'm listing some of products of the company, right? It can be the customers of the company as data can be a product. The orders of the company can be a product because I analyze the orders and I understand something, right? So maybe I want to have it more frequently. So one feature in my backlog is instead of doing that once a month, I'm refreshing once a week. I can get more sources. Maybe I'm having multiple system of records at the company. I'm having the system in China, the system in India, the system in Africa, and my first product, my first POC is only the one in Europe. And then I'm adding the one in China, so I'm creating more sources. I'm expanding the coverage of my products. I have more dimension. I can measure orders by type of product. I can measure orders by region, by customer address, or I actually improve the quality. Because I know at the beginning my customer address is full. So I do a couple of sprints to get my customer address from 80% to 90%, to 100% for a reason. I can have more controls. I have privacy regulations. I'm having localization regulation. I'm having other controls. I want to make sure that whatever happens at the source is reflected in my product downstream. I have better standards. I know who's accessing this, and on and on. So more compliance. So as a product, I can think about agile development for my data. I don't need to deliver, boom, first day, everything, but I can work on the story to build in my evolution of the product all the different features of the story. And the story can evolve itself. So today, we wanted to go at 50 miles an hour minimum with our car. Tomorrow, we want to go 100. Tomorrow, instead of 5 people in the car, we want to have 7. So you add features. It becomes a good discussion, a good dynamic between yourself and your clients, right? So, but what is the challenge? We need to start, remember we were discussing about the portfolio of our company, all the things the company wants to do. There are many projects out there. Many people want to consume data. So we need to redesign the way we look at the portfolio of the company, and we need to identify the feature that we want to capture. We need to see the product when they don't see it. We need to say, oh, because you want to do this here, this there, it means you need a new product that is called alarms. My company, we do panels for electricity, and these panels are now connected for sending to the customer alarms. So there is a stream of data that comes in. Now, all of a sudden, we want to make sure that our people in the fields are understanding the alarms and they can activate themselves based on the alarm. So there is a new product we need to put together. So there's a new story. And I find it not because one person told me that. I find it because many people are telling me different things and I'm putting this story together. And what happens is really, you start to look like that. You have projects, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and most of them can be waterfall. Most of these people might say, I start December 1st, I want to finish March 31st, I want to deliver all of this. So you need to convince them that, yeah, you might deliver 60% of that, because what I'm trying to do is to understand what outcomes are having these projects in common. And it might be algorithms, maybe KPIs, maybe dashboard, maybe data, so something is an outcome. And what my team will do, will understand the consumer story and start to connect the outcomes, because some things might be in common. And then you connect the outcomes through the requirements, which was, again, a piece of our data excellence operating model, is the data requirement. I know the story, therefore I can write the requirement, which data you want, how you want it, where is the data? You have a question? Yes.
Either the product owner or the project.
I'm getting to that. Can you hang on a second? There's a couple of slides later, I'll discuss that, because that's an interesting dynamic. So the question was about project owner versus product owner, and we're going to get to that. But through the data requirements, I'm now connecting to the data domains. Remember the data domains, again, all the different sets of data. I know where I'm going to go and ask which data I'm going to consume. And that, in turn, allows me to make a prioritization of my products. So I repeat that. So if you imagine now, I have all the portfolio of the projects on my company. I know the totality of what is required. I know the totality of all the data is needed, so I can prioritize the work I do on my products. Because in the domains, I will have products, and I build this thing together. It's simpler to say than to put in place, because then you have to explain why project 3 should wait for prices to be finalized, because prices is wanted by project 1 first before they can get the product. It's a very interesting dynamic you need to put in place, because most people don't know Agile yet. So I find myself in companies teaching data and Agile at the same time. And that's a double somersault that people have to do from a cultural point of view. Because previously we're not even thinking about data. Now they have to think about data in an Agile environment, while they're still doing very much waterfall projects. Do you see the challenge? I mean, it's because you can't, people are used to say, when I finish my project, I'm done. Now you're telling them, no, I'll give you an MVP 2 months before you finish, which should be good for you to go ahead and wait that I'm giving you another couple of sprints for you to finish maybe 2 months later. And then they have to explain their boss that they're going to need more budget or they're going to need more time to finish, because Roberto is asking them to be patient and work in an agile manner. That's the complexity there. Questions so far? Still with me? Nod? Yeah? Nodded there? At the end, are you okay with that? Good. As I said, don't get too comfy, because we're going to move you around in a second. Prioritization. What prioritization is there? Prioritization. Which one do we have? Because prioritization, we need to do a prioritization, because in theory, you never have all the resources you need to do everything you want to do. So my assumption is that the demand is always higher than the capacity. Is that your question? Sorry. Which factor? Which factor is based on the demand? Basically, I will, if different layers here in offering, after this clear down to the But if you remember from, if you remember from the discussion, maybe you don't, but if you remember the discussion about the portfolio, we're trying to prioritize project in terms of business value, budget, risk. So that prioritization on the left influence your prioritization on the right. There are considerations because you might say, oh, look, cases is actually in a very good level. It's a very good level of quality. It's ready to be used by everyone. So there is very little I need to do to make this better. Maybe orders is not the one that everyone wants, but it's the one in which I have to work the most. So it's a continuous balance of understanding where do I put my bets. Make sense? No? Yeah. Good. But prioritization is negotiation all the time. It's compromise. And you need to start with the assumption that you're not going to make everyone happy. Can't happen. So there's going to be a lot of managing of expectation. And what happens is that if you're not good at demonstrating that you are priority one and I give you something, you are priority two and I give you something in 2 months. So if you are priority three and you see that I'm serving priority one and he's never going to get it, you don't want to be priority three. You want to always be priority one. And we can't be all priority one. So demonstrating that you are having what is in Agile called velocity. So you actually providing things, you're going through the backlog, you're showing the backlog everyone is the best way to make people comfortable that there is a prioritization is followed. Because if there is no prioritization is followed, if they feel that you're not following prioritization, you're dead. Because people will say, you're useless, I can't wait for you, I'll do it myself. Right? Back to the mentality. Right, so what are the critical roles for this one? And that's probably coming to that. There is a sort of a, you will excuse, I've said trimurti, right? So like, there are 3 big roles around here that are actually very much interconnected. So we discussed the data domain owner is the person, if I remind you, is the person or the group of people that really define what data is, what good looks like for data. So if there is a concept called customer or order or delivery or a product, there is only one group of people, there should be one group of people that has got the last word of what it is, what makes it good, how many lines the customer address should have. We will be able to freely decide in the company 3 lines, 4 lines, 5 lines. No, there is only one data domain owner for customer decide. The customer address is made by the road, the address, the city, the postcode, the nation. That's it. And by the way, country is based on ISO 3166, which is a 2-digit code. So there's only one group of people. They define and they help to build. So you have on the other side, the data architect. These are the people that are taking the requirement and designing the feature. So these are people that are taking the requirement, the story that comes from the customer, which might be or might not be the data domain owner, because sometimes they have their own needs, but there are other needs, and they design for it. They would be told, this is the source of authority. When you want customer, you go to this place. When you move customer around, you need to encrypt the data, because otherwise we breach the limits. When you want to consume customer, you go to this other place. When you put customer together to order, you need to cross this way. So that's all about the design. And the architect puts those design onto the backlog. Then this guy builds them. Now you can call it project owner, product owner, but in Agile is more the product owner. So the product owner is having one purpose in life: move on the backlog. So take stuff from the backlog, is arranging the sprints, and then when the sprint is closed, understand what happened in the sprint. And it feeds back the product manager, which is the person or the group that says, my product should evolve this way. And now I'm using product in a very generic term, because it can be your iPhone, can be this pointer, can be a data set that people are using for machine learning. That's the last page on productization. Any question on that?
backlog, the particular sprint unexpectedly, really reason. So but it is a priority for that release, the upcoming release, but unexpectedly we have moved into backlog. So who will approve that time? In that release, this feature will not be that. So who will be the final approval? Later, domain owner or?
It's between the product owner and the product manager. Now, as I said, the data domain owner can be the question was, who's deciding what goes in the next release?
Yeah.
In terms of prioritization.
Because data domain, I think that about that release, these of the features will be there in the release.
Yeah.
So it should be within the data domain owner and the client, right? Like the data domain owner has to be approved, right?
That's why I'm saying that sometimes the lines are blurred, because sometimes the data domain owner is a client themselves. And you have to be careful, because sometimes they are getting a bit of a conflict of interest, because they might want to accelerate things and forget about that the data has to be pretty standard, pretty curated and so on. But you're right. So the product manager, which might or might not be the data domain owner, sits with the product owner, and they are the one the closest to the client, right? They have to take what the client wants. They need to understand that how much of what has been delivered is accruing to or is taking you in the right direction from a story point of view, and they need to decide what's going to go in the next release. But the theory is that because this is happening very, very frequently, it's much less likely that you're going to deliver something that the client doesn't want. But as we were discussing last time, it's all about people relationship. It's all about communication. So, you know how many times people are coming to me and say, the customer wants. And then you're like, not the customer, actually someone else. And that's why you need to be careful that you are covering all these corners. So good communication cannot replace a process, right? Has to be connected to the process. So you need to make sure that these things are working together. There is a governance, there is observability of what's happening. So you have literally sign off, you have your finance person says, yeah, you told me that it was this benefit. Now I can see the benefit actually. Or you told me that if you were delivering this data set to this data product, you were having people reducing 50% their use of Excel, show me what it is. And that creates a vicious circle. Make sense? So these are roles, right? And people play multiple roles all the time. But you need to be effective in explaining what is expected by this role. And for me, the basic is the architect designs, the data domain defines, this guy builds. And then to be connected. Or with us, yes, another question.
Louder.
And because I'm getting old.
Let's go here, Brian.
Oh, can we actually give this around? Doesn't work.
Product owner will have the communication with the customer to get feedback from the customer. We'll be getting feedback
Oh,
from
you
the
came closer, your voice went down.
customer.
No, but you said, tell your colleagues. Tell your colleagues. No, come in.
So what I'm asking is like, who will get some feedback from the customer?
Yes,
So who will be getting feedback from the customer?
product owner.
That's okay.
Why? Because the product owner does what is called a retrospective. So the product owner closes a sprint and says, how did we go? Does it work? What do you think? You will call tests, right? So at the end of the test, you have a retrospective that says, we know this went well, and you might decide it went badly. So the good thing of Agile, don't forget, is that if you are into a dead end, if your product is actually, you made a boo-boo, right? In your tuck kind of thing, instead of putting one wheel in front and two wheels in back, your first thing was two wheels in front and one in back. And you realize that, oh, actually, it's not very stable. Then you stop, you go back, you say, well, the word you use is you pivot. Basically, you abandon a direction, you remove a feature, you replace another feature, and you do that in the retrospective. So it's a good way of not going too far away in a bad direction. Because waterfall projects are usually going away for years. And I come and say, there you go. And people say, that's not what I asked. And I said, too bad, I spent all my budget for the last 2 years. Happens. You don't want that. See, you're very much into agile these days, and now and then you come here and explain to that. Come on.
So this is something when so this is something when we are working with directly with the client. But what will happen if we are the vendor working with the in between the client? Like there is a we are the vendor. We are not directly working with the client. We are the vendor of the company, and the company is working with the client.
Okay, so you basically have you are not this guy, but someone behind this guy. So you still depend on this guy or this lady to tell you the right thing.
So in that, we don't have a data domain owner in the.
No, but you expect it would be a data domain owner in the company. So there's someone has to say, what is the good looking like?
So who will be the owner? Like who will approve the lease and retro and everything? Who will close the retro, or who will close the sprint, or who close the?
But it's still is something that this person will never outsource.
Mm.
Make sense for you?
Mm.
Let's move on. So we'll catch up at the end in case. Now that we talked about products, let's go into the juice. So how do we evaluate? Because at the end it's about the money, right? Or more about the money, we'll see. So how do we evaluate? And basically we have two types of evaluation we can put here. And that's personal view, but coming from the manufacturer, that works for me. And you might have more an inventory view. So you build your product, you build your data, and basically you calculate the value of what costs you to put it together. So you do something in manufacturing is called cost of goods sold, right? If you've done a bit of an economy. And basically you have an inventory cost. You build it, then you store it. And that's good when you are internally trying to understand what is your return on asset, return on investment, because you want to know that I spend this much, and if I use it, I'm going to get this much in terms of value. If I don't use it, it sits there, and it's going to be an inventory cost. That's one type of evaluation. And if there are companies that are doing this at the very, very, very minute level, so they basically can tell you, and especially companies that are doing the other bit, they can tell you to acquire customer data or to acquire that piece of data, it costs me exactly this. And that from a financial point of view makes you, you have to be in a position to do very good, what is called activity-based costing. So literally everyone that moves a step in the company, it's going to cost them. So if you imagine a graph of your company, every little step of a process in the company is going to cost. Right? So the company, instead of doing that more of a high level, so more or less have these people working on a product, more or less maybe in this number of products in a month, or this number of releases, that's more or less my cost. It really depends what's the precision you want to have when you're trying to do evaluation. So that's an inventory point of view, more internal point of view. Then there is a second part, which is more the market value point of view. That's why people get very excited about data monetization, right? I want to monetize my data. Yeah, good. But before you put your data back in a nice window for people to see, you want to be sure that you've done the right thing. Because here, this value is more linked to the appetite, to the willingness to someone to buy. If I go to you and say, do you want to buy this data set? You're going to ask me, what is it? How good is it? And then you say, well, there's another guy selling me at half the price. So there is a demand and offer. And there are actually market values that are beyond the simple money, because I don't know if you are aware of what the ODI, the Open Data Institute, does, and they're asking companies to give data for free for a greater good. So can you say that's value zero? No, but it's a bit more complex. So whichever way you look at this, what we want to know, what we want to say is that the value is behind the consumer. Whether it's an internal consumer or it's an external consumer, a lot of the value is going to be driven by what's the willingness to buy that, and what the willingness for the consumer to buy, to give you money, or to give you something, or give you time, because time is money, is basically dictated one thing. So remember that we say that we use a product an agent will use a product to gain some value, right? So we can imagine that the value that you gain has to be mitigated by an acceptance level. So if I'm the consumer, I have certain acceptance. I can't get my work done if my data is not as good as this. And we said at the beginning that sometimes people don't have the way of expressing it. Sometimes people say, either you're giving perfect data or can't do stuff. But it's up to us to, through the story, to extract that. So do you want perfect data? You really need perfect data? Your algorithm will never be, it basically is not sensitive to something at more than 95. Why do you want to get more than 95? What are you going to do with this algorithm? What do you want to, why you want to have a dashboard that is refreshed every day? You're talking about the freaking financial processes that not going to be refreshed for a month. What's the point of having something refreshed every day? So there is an acceptance that we need to educate, and the idea to get the value, but both of them, well, mainly is based on the quality. So if you don't have a certain level of quality, you can't accept data. If you can't accept data, you can't get value. Still with me? Now we get a bit more scientific then. So to achieve desired value, an investment is necessary to close the gaps between expectation and the status quo. Status quo is, this is the data today. This is my acceptance level. So if I want to use this to gain value, there is some money to spend because I'm assuming that things are not as good as I wanted. And now, myself and Professor Seiano did a bit of a little paper in which we start to work on this thing, which is basically we are starting to quantify this as money, and the money is the difference between the acceptance level and it's basically there is something that we can say between these two, there is a factor that says I need to spend some money and me to achieve that, to close those gaps. So my consumer will use that data to do something with it. And then of course, I'm cheating here because in that move you can put everything, right? So here you can put the cost of a defect, how much is costing me to fix a defect, how much is costing me to change the architecture for making sure that I'm in faster delivery, all that. But substantially, this is the key thing. There is a delta between what I want and what I have. And to bring what I want to what I have, so what I have to what I want, I need to spend money.
Yes, so
Yes.
I
The paper has been approved, so you can.
do you have any record of previous combination of both parameters, air, keep and move?
Well, nowadays we store all the historical, yes. But you're asking because I want to see the evolution of what I'm doing, or because I want to.
Because I think that in new cases, you have air keep and then you can derive new trade.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. But the other thing you want to do is that you want to prove that if I give you the right data, I get this.
Okay.
And sometimes we don't, in businesses, we forget about the decision we made before.
Okay.
So we said, oh, to have a better customer sell, I need to improve my customer address. But then we don't go back and say, oh, we spent all of this, but do we get what we want? That's where we are insisting in the next few pages.
Wait.
Of course, Roberto.
I don't know if students know about ROI, what is return on investment. I mean, if you consider the value in terms of business value, then you need the denominator in this formula, because you have to consider what is with respect to the cost.
Correct.
Is really the advantage, the business value. So
Correct.
there are many different ways to calculate
Skin the cat.
this value.
Yeah. But
then we need some knowledge about it.
what I'm trying.
We should also invite students to look on internet. You can find all kind of definition. But then also in terms of value for data excellence, I think you have to consider a relative concept, not an absolute concept.
Yeah, the idea was not to build an entire economy around that, but the ambition was more for me to create a indicator, something that says, that allows me to say,
even though the indicator needs to be normalized.
Well, that's no, because the model on this one is the tech debt. So tech debt is basically an amount non-normalized that is establishing what is the amount of obsolescence you have in your own technology, and it tells you that you need to spend some money. Now, of course, use that amount when you do a practical rationale of whether should I or should I not. There's going to be a denominator coming out there, because if to remove the obsolescence of 100,000, I need to spend 2 million. Maybe it doesn't make sense, but it's still used a lot to create area of attention and to quantify something as a whole that allows you to tell you, this is what I'm carrying. And you want to have that in absolute terms rather than in relative terms. But that's the next paper we're going to write.
Okay.
So the idea is that I want to know, remember we're discussing about the bad data, the thing you have chained to your ankle that basically stops you to be good at digital because stops you to do the right things. So you have a lot of stuff that is non-known, bad quality, put in the wrong place, given to the wrong person, that cannot be used for good. So making that together, spending this money, closing the data debt, is allowing you to be better, to be faster, to start to reuse more. And the way we're visualizing is, if you think now back to the data products, right? So we start the data products. And the first thing we need to do is to set, there's going to be a setup and initiation phase. To your point, we have to have an architecture in which we build this. We might have a people that are starting to work. So there's a startup. And the startup is, I have cost, I don't have value. Because I'm building my cost, I still don't have value. Then we started with the sprint. And at a certain moment, we get to what we said. At a certain moment, we increase the quality of our data, the visibility of our data is now published, it's been tested, it's good. I get to a point in which, based on the stories, I want to stress this continuously. This is always down to the story. Viability is related to the story. There is no viability in absolute term. It's viable because someone said, if you give me that way, I can use it. So you get to a point in which you achieve minimum viability. And now that is like a reaction that is now self-sustaining. Oh, I can start to use it. I'm getting a minimum level of value, so I can start to use it. And then you go ahead with your sprints and you improve. And you're going to get to a point in which okay, I'm done with this. And now I'm okay, or I want to put in operations, I will do DevOps, whatever you want to do. There's a moment in which hello guys, I hope you were online before this, because otherwise you missed most of it, but that's okay. So the more we know how value relates to data, again, consumer story, the more we optimize and ensure its realization. We know the story, we build this series of sprints that are going to take us closer and closer and closer, better, delivering better products.
Can I add? You achieve saturation.
At a certain point, basically you maintain the product.
Because
just
you have to
maintaining.
match all the requirements, or just because to make any costs too much.
It can be both, but also the story and the epic can change completely. So basically you are going back to a certain point here, because again, this is assuming that I'm talking about one product that is more or less the same. And then it depends when a story takes you to to look at it as a completely different product, because things are changing, right? So you achieve saturation, you achieve a point in which you're maintaining, and you can decide, well, there is now another product that is doing what this product was doing. So I phase this out, I stop it, and maybe I just use this one as is supposed to increase because you are adding features. But it's back to the story, the consumer story has to tell you how that feature connects to more value, because otherwise this doesn't work. And so if you want to do it more from a cost of good data product, you have a total cost, you have a setup cost, and you have the sum of the data depths that are the ones that you are taking away every time you do a new sprint. I'm expecting that you fix more data, it's more quality. There is another dimension that is more organized, it's more it's been curated. So it's connected to others. So you are removing debts you're having and getting better and better. And the whole idea is that because this is now can be related to how good you are at what you do in data, because the setup costs are going to be proportional how good you are at doing architecture. We didn't discuss architecture last time, but you can imagine that a simpler architecture that is managed in a more effective way is going to reduce my costs. So cloud, for example, has given you a lot of elasticity, a lot of flexibility. So your costs to put in place something new has gone dramatically low. I mean, I was in the day in which you before starting a project, you need to call the IT guy and say, can I buy a new server? I mean, it doesn't happen anymore. I go on my Azure control, I say, poop, I spin up another machine, and we'll see what's the problem with that. Demand management. So if you are able to sequence and prioritize, your cost should be down because you'll be able to to kill the proverbial two birds with one stone. Delivery methodology. If you waste time, if you're not good at what you're doing, of course your cost is going to increase. And communication. Back to prioritization. Am I talking to the right person? Am I convincing people of the right prioritization, all of that? Instead, on the debt side, the better your governance, the better you are monitoring the health of your data and maintaining with resilience your data. So when you change things, people are not making mistakes. And the higher is the literacy of fluency, that should take your debt down. Still with me? Also the new ones? No? Yeah? No? Yes, no? Yes, Leopard.
Short-term speed and hurry.
I know they're putting a formula on the screen. Will have created a problem.
How to then together to normalization, constant improvement is one.
Sorry, I can't.
You have 4 terms, not an overtime.
No, it's just I'm saying that these are the key capabilities you need to have to be better at that. I'm not.
You complete my mind.
It's basically, and we have an exercise at the end. We have exercise.
Great. No, I tell you why I'm so interested in this, because from a completely different point of view, this is an issue which we are very often with the scientific developments.
Yeah, I can imagine.
An issue that I would like to
Yeah.
discuss with you about this, because
And I'll tell you later a story because funny enough, I changed my role and now I'm up to here in I will tell you a story later. So let's go to something different now, because actually this is in my garden. I was taken by the rot that was giving life again. I was actually very taken by this. And that's apple, rotten apple. Life comes out of even rotten things. So here more about we start to look at a different level, because up until now we've been talking about valuation as money. But now we need to understand that you guys, you should understand more than I know, because I'm older and you should care more. There is a wider sense of value. So for the people that don't know, this is the Sustainable Development Goals from the United Nations. If you're not familiar with that, get familiar with this, because every company on planet Earth wants to become a social impact company. So you want to demonstrate with data that you're good at this.
Yeah.
There is a lot of greenwashing, whitewashing, whatever. I know that. But because this is a complex problem. And I can tell you that now in my new job, I'm deep into this. Because for every single product, and when you say product, I'm talking about something as simple as that. You see this? They're called VBUS. So these are made of plastic. I have a table that tells me what's the contribution to depletion of water, what's the contribution to life on land, what's the contribution. So you can imagine now the dimensionality of my data has exploded.
Yeah.
And the ability for people then to digest that and say, okay, so if I buy a bus plastic that is depleting 10 and -6 times 1.6, the the clean water and sanitation, is it better than another one is actually having 1.5, 10 and the -7? So we're creating data that people cannot digest yet. The problem is that is flipping connected to share value. Fund managers are now offering you ESG funds. And in theory, they are actually checking the credentials of a company from this point of view. So this has to be a valuation that comes in your data. There is no question about it. If someone is having doubt, come and see me after class.
What is the advantage of matching 17 points for a company?
What is the advantage?
If a company matches as a good trade out of this 17.
The investors are coming and buying from you.
So basically, it's the basic which the rich Western world is imposing on other countries who are not so.
I'm not going to go in a communist discussion with you or a socialist, whatever it is, but
But the problem is.
yes, no, but the other.
United Nations would always play the.
No, but the reality is the boards of companies have now to think more than a simple model that says more sales equal more value, more revenue. Those models are dead.
The matter of adjective, for value, there might be something.
No, value is a much wider thing now.
So it's a kind of multidimensional, so I see value like a vector. So you
So it
can.
becomes a-
kind of dash, you can see all the indicators, how.
Yes, but the issue is that from a business point of view, it becomes way more complex to understand one thing. Am I doing the right thing?
Yes, fundamentally, you cannot add up all this.
No. So going towards the end, I'm 2 pages from the end. So the reflection for you is this. We have our responsibility as data leaders. Remember what I said? I don't need to call anyone to spin up a server anymore. Now I can just go on my machine and activate a bit from a screen 64 processor. Oh no, I don't call it processor, I call it threads and 3 terabytes. Who cares? Well, we care.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you're familiar with this, and this is a source. And so data centers have overtaken aviation in terms of CO2 equivalent emission. Don't forget, when people are telling you CO2 is not just CO2, it's CH4, SF6. There are a lot of other greenhouse gases. And that blue line there, it means that there is an uncertainty with whether we are between 2.5 and 3.7. So, no, we need to work on something that's called data minimization that the GDPR is asking us to do. So we need to stop saying, just because I can, I spin up a 3 petabytes environment because who cares? Just because I can keep all my emails because who cares? Well, there is a problem there. And in Schneider, we're doing a lot trying to make data centers more and more efficient. But at this rate, there's nothing we can do. And bear in mind that the statistics say that 75% of the data in there is not used.
Yeah.
So do the calculation, how much emission we're doing for nothing. Just because we want to keep your picture when someone send you something on WhatsApp, you keep it internally a clip of 50 gigabytes of a cat that was doing something stupid, right? Now, there are consequences nowadays. The issue is that the data, as I said at the beginning, is like nuclear power. It can be used for good and for evil. We need to be careful. With big power comes big responsibility.
Can compute the impact of game from Naples, championship of Naples.
Yeah, we can do that.
On the
Very important is,
Sorry.
people point out. Those things is really.
So what can we do?
Also because you have like training a large artificial intelligence model.
Oh, yeah.
And taking bitcoins. Is
Exactly.
7%.
Guys, well, for you, I'm sure that you're doing
More
it.
than 7%.
Bitcoins and crypto is a massive because it's not only because your CO2 emission is not just storage, it's CPU power,
Yeah.
right? There is not enough solar panels that could put on things to mine Bitcoins. So what can we do? So what I run internally to my company, I run an exercise. We're producing a white paper now. It's called on green data. So the idea is that everything we do has got a bit of a shadow because we have a footprint of everything we're trying to measure how many gigabytes we serving versus how many gigabytes we're using. So imagine that at the end of the chain, at the top of the pyramid, you have a nice dashboard with your data, but that is made by 3 different environments because you have production, UAT, and testing. Then it's just in Tableau. And Tableau is taking data from a Redshift environment. It's got another 3 environments. Then it's basically picking data from everywhere. You are having jobs on Informatica that are you see, there is a ramification, and at the end, you have a footprint. So the idea is to start to design to have the minimum footprint. And one key of that is the Cinderella of all the activities in data, which was data retention. Nobody wanted to do data retention. When people were putting you on a data retention project, kind of was signaling your career was dead. Well, guess what? All this plus all the different regulations on planet Earth are making Cinderella data retention a nice, beautiful princess that now everyone has to get and bowl with. And because that is the key to minimize your footprint. Do you really need this data? No, remove it. Dispose of it. Do something with it. Right. So back to our, you can see that our sustainability comes into place when we build products, because we build products with better architecture, with better delivery, with better governance, better money, also from a sustainability point of view. Are we reducing our footprint? Are we reducing our amount of CPU we use? Are we reducing the cycles? Are we reducing everything that can be done in a way that we maintain the minimum possible footprint of what you do? Of course, providing the same kind of service. Everything comes together. Right? That was the last page. So now we're going to go to the practical exercise, unless there are questions. If there are questions, there is a question.
Software engineering terminology, we have a concept, technical debt. You refer to data debt.
Yes.
Technical debt is caused by having too many deadlines.
Yeah.
For example, if I'm a developer, I have a deadline, there's a small bug, a small problem, I push it behind, I release because the deadline is here.
Okay, sweeping under the carpet.
Yeah. In agile development, it's a good methodology, but sometimes I believe sometimes it leads to having more technical debt and having bad architecture. You know,
You have to be good at design.
yeah.
Actually, in Agile, you have to be exceptionally good at design.
It's good for big companies, huge organizations.
No, but small companies having good brains for designing doesn't change the size doesn't matter in architecture, believe me. Actually, size matters because bigger companies are in bigger problems. If you are small and nimble, you should be able to design even better. My view.
So you believe here in data science, going with agile development leads to better architecture and
No, I don't believe anything. So I can tell you that my belief is that waterfall and agile, if the conditions are perfect, there is no difference between the two. There is no difference between the two. I repeat that. If conditions are perfect, the problem is conditions are never perfect. So agile allows you to trap a problem or trap an issue or trap a drift and intervene earlier and avoid that you waste money. That's the only difference. But if you are very good at requirement, very good at design, incredibly good at delivery, incredibly on top of understanding what your customer wants, there should be no difference between the two methodologies.
the answer is you have to be incredibly good. Otherwise, you are going to face many problems in agile.
That's why I do data excellence, my friend. I didn't say data mediocrity, it was data excellence. So I'm trying to teach you what is the aspiration you should have, and I'm trying to teach you what are the, let's say, methods and the frame of mind that will allow to tell you this is good, this is not so good. Then if you want to perceive it as not so good, it's your own issue, but it's free will. Okay?
Okay.
Can I ask you,
Yes.
you have any the range of cost for petabyte of data?
We are getting to that. The issue is that the cloud provider themselves are changing, they're trying to make themselves very efficient. So there is a continuous change, and there is definitely a reduction of costs. But I can tell you that an estimate we made, which was the one that is pretty much fair estimate, and we were using it for pushing the data retention project with our teams, but not in less from an IT point of view, more from a user point of view. We're trying to them reducing their own PST, their own Outlook emails. We calculate that an email with a decent attachment is basically consuming 15 grams of CO2 per year. One email.
So, more useful to use, it's like, for instance, a terabyte of data, this is how much it costs.
I need to work on a terabyte. So we're talking about 5 gig. So 5 gig is, you need to multiply by 200 if I'm not incorrect. Terabyte is 1,000, right? So 200 doing this on a spot. So 215 is 3 kilos a year. 3 kilograms of CO2 per year, 1 terabyte. Yes, sir.
So, as you mentioned, sir, as you mentioned, that is a very good problem statement that the CO2 emission is increasing. When we have a CO2 plant near to the data center, you can use that CO2 in the greenhouse. Or
yes,
so many other.
Yes, now you get into what is the things I'm now up to here, which is scope 1, 2, 3, and 4 calculation. So scope 1 and 2 is what's the effect of your direct, production. Scope 2 is what's the effect of indirect production, your supplier. Scope 3, what's happening upstream to you and downstream to you. So I agree, there are many, many ways of mitigating, but back to the smirking of Professor Rousseau, there's a lot of people say, I'm going to offset here, I'm going to build a forest there. And then this calculation, the regulators are now starting to regulate also the calculation of this scope as if they were financial calculations. So very soon, when a company will issue to the market, this is my revenue, and this is my CO2 target, both of them will be audited. So we're getting there. So I agree, you can do anything you want to mitigate as long as it's actually true. Because I think doing greenwashing doesn't help anyone.
There's be a lot of cloud providers of the company. There are a lot of data centers.
I know, it's all about the data. Tell me, show me through the data that is true. So our job is going to be even more important because now we're not building a truth machine, but we're building a machine that will tell us whether we are doing the right thing for the planet or not. A lot of responsibility, my friends. Okay, so we go into the practical exercise now. Okay.